And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate, where look, Tom, you've already pointed this out. Brett jumped into the tailgate at 8:17 a.m. And he wanted to point out the New Mexico-Utah State total of 78.5. We'll see if anyone's got a lock on it Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, of course, where
I might too.
Why not?
Well, yeah, you're right. Why not? You know, it's that time of year. Let's go. Undisciplined Danny. We've got sort of a whole host of updates and reactions that we sort of need to package together. So if it's okay with y'all, I'm going to go to the infirmary. And I guess first, before the infirmary, we should stop by the graveyard because, Tom, you're proven correct here. Not expecting to see Cam Rising. I don't know if we'll see Adam Driver, but we get the news that Cam Rising's season is done. We're handing the Utah reins over to Isaac Wilson. Our long national nightmare is done, at least as it pertains to trying to figure out who Utah will be on the field, whether or not Cam Rising will return. And if he returns, will he be able to help Utah reach its full idealized potential? So how do we deal with Utah moving forward based on what we've seen from Isaac Wilson and what we've seen from the Utes?
Downgrade them significantly. They aren't the team we thought they would be. Like when they came out to start the season, Cam Rising was supposedly playing in that first game and played well. It's like, all right, Utah's going to be good. And then he looked good in the first half against Baylor. Then the finger injury happens. And they've been a pretty mediocre team since. And they looked like a pretty mediocre team even with him playing last week, even though he was clearly not at 100%. Like it was obvious. Like he sprained his ankle on like the second snap of the game, got rolled up on. But more than even before that, like he couldn't grip the football. Whatever the hand injury is, it's clearly just, like he couldn't hold on to a football, which is kind of a key thing when you're a quarterback and your job is to throw it.
So you say it like it's a bad thing.
So but this team, it's without Rising at the peak form that we would expect, it's just not that good of a team. And it's nothing against Wilson, the backup. It's just, but he's not the same player. It's a team with a much lower ceiling and a lower floor now.
They're going to probably get to 6-2 because of the schedule. TCU, Houston, then they play BYU. It's going to be really interesting. Rivalry game. That'll be fun. BYU's playing with so much confidence. But I just don't take them as a serious contender for the Big 12. And this is coming from somebody who thought this was the most sure thing of any of the Power Four conferences was Utah, Cam Rising back. They're going to win it, running away. They're a lock for the playoff. But if you would have told me Cam Rising was going to miss as much time as he would, I said, whoa, let's change that pick right away. What I think is even more fascinating is what do you do with him? Because, the Utah put out a statement that said, he's out for the year. And then it said they alluded to the fact that any further eligibility will deal with at a later date. As good as he is, he has been incredibly injury prone the last 2 seasons. We are paying players now. So I don't know what his rate is. I'm assuming it's over 500,000. I don't know what Utah's paying, but do you want to allocate that money back? Like, does Utah want Cam Rising back? And I don't know if they do. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing to play that waiting game and what it prohibits you from potentially bringing in to Utah. So I think we might have seen the last of Cam Rising at Utah.
I'm interested to see what comes of this situation overall, because him playing against Arizona State basically lost them the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazingly bad. We sipping on the bone broth? Let's go.
You noticed that, huh?
Danny's just my wife. That's really, you two are the same people.
Oh, man. Okay. So, why did he play that game? I mean, there were reports 3 weeks ago that he was going to play or that he was likely to play. And after observing him in this, there's no freaking way he was anywhere close to being ready to play 3 weeks ago. Like those were wrong. But why did he play in this one? Like he was so bad. And we've seen Wilson play, and Wilson's not good. But I don't think Wilson has played any games so far this year that are as bad as that. Like that was
awful.
Bro, like, do we just think he was going to gamer hit? Like he's a gamer. He's going to game his way back in because, like Tom said, he couldn't grip the football. Like he's double clutching it to throw bad pit. Like, was there some kind of promise made, or like I don't get it. Like
well,
motivation.
What about the Whittingham of it all? We've got somebody who has announced that he is not going to be the head coach with a TBD on when he steps down.
Right. This is why it feels weird to me. Like who made the call that he needed to be playing?
Cam Rising, coach in waiting.
Was it Utah? Yeah. Doesn't it feel strange to you guys? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, and the 8th year of eligibility thing comes down to me being like, well, how is this it for Whittingham? Like, what does Morgan Scalley want to do? When does he want to be able to usher in the new era? Does Andy Ludwig, very experienced offensive coordinator who has done a really good job at multiple stops, does he want to be on Morgan Scalley's staff as the offensive coordinator if Cam Rising is back? I mean, there's a lot that is very murky about the future of Utah football, a program that was peaking as it made the move from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. And we had sort of identified it as being like, all right, well, they're just going to hit the ground running and they're just going to be, the class of the conference. And look, I will maintain this is still a super high floor team. Like we said in the offseason, last year's floor, we saw it. It was 8-4. And guess what? This year's probably going to be what? 8-4?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but last year they were 8-4 in a much tougher league last year. I think that coaching staff appreciates Cam Rising. I think they love Cam Rising. I think the guys in that locker room love Cam Rising. I don't think this has anything to do with Cam Rising.
No,
as much as I just think Utah, for the sake of the program, needs to move on, because you can't be playing this game again next year of the will he or won't he play. I think you just need to. If Cam wants to play another season, he's going to have to play it somewhere else.
I did try to galaxy brain this thing on the will Utah be better? ? Just eliminate the uncertainty, right? I mean, it's just, okay, we're done. Maybe it's for the coaches. Like we are now going to drill in on exactly what Isaac Wilson does, and we are going to do those few things that he can do well, really, really well. We're going to strip this thing down to we are going to be limited, but at least the things we can do at a high level, because we're not going to be asking anybody to do anything from the Cam Rising playbook. Is it something with the confidence where everybody in that team, everybody on that offense is now like, all right, we got to rally together. There's no more Cam's going to save us lingering in the back of my mind. But I don't know if I believe that, but I at least, in the dead cat bounce, is there a possibility that Utah gets through this? I don't think Utah competes for the Big 12 title with Isaac Wilson, but I at least wondered if, as choppy as Utah has been over the last month or so, I wondered if there's a positive outcome for this if you're a Utah fan.
I think the lesson here is, and every single one of us on this show has experienced it. Everybody watching and listening has experienced it. Grief is hard. Loss is sometimes hard to deal with and come to accept. They have to accept that Cam is gone.
This is all the stages. Please contact Tom Fornelli. He can help guide you through this. He is not a licensed professional, but he's got a big heart and he's here to listen. Can you help out anybody who is excited about USC's defense and this huge, big change in Danton Lynn's what's happening to this roster? I mean, all right, so Bear Alexander, we're like, okay, well, he wasn't playing all the time, but that's still a big body, a loss from the interior of the defensive line. We had mentioned before, Eric Gentry, he had been missing some time. They said it was due to concussions. It is now announced that he's going to redshirt 24. They lose Lucas as well. I'm struggling to think that USC is going to be able to continue the storyline, at least, of having a defense that's taking a big step forward if they simply don't have enough players to execute at a high level down the stretch of the season.
Yes.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I mean, you know what's great on defense, and it's something that Lincoln Riley did this offseason that was good and needed? Upgrading your coaching staff. Having good, smart coaches who know how to put their players in the best position is great to have. You know what's better? Having players. And USC no longer has any players on its defense, or it's losing a lot of the players. So even with the coaching upgrade, like, I do not have high expectations for this Trojans defense the rest of the year. We'd kind of seen things slipping in the last few weeks as it is due to the attrition. But now, like Gentry, he'd been gone the last few weeks. He's out for the rest of the year. Anthony Lucas was the team's best pass rusher. Like their pass rush had not been great this season. It's been fine. But now you lose the guy who's been your biggest disruptor in that aspect. I don't know, man. It could be a tough back half of the schedule for the Trojans, even though the schedule itself lightens up considerably compared to what they faced already.
And they've played well.
Yeah.
For a lot of the season. Like just offensively and defensively, they have a real hard schedule. Like you do kind of wonder, is there a breaking point coming on this? I don't know. Maybe there is.
Losing to Maryland and or Rutgers, I think would be it.
Yeah.
Like I think they're a team that's on quit watch because of the expectations, because of the type of program. They've played great, right? I mean, they haven't won. Lincoln Riley's not wrong when he says we're close. It's just they haven't been able to win some of these tight games, and it sucks, and it's no fun to be in that position. But how long can you keep this going on without getting the wins to show for it? I also wouldn't be surprised, like, which one of these offenses really scare you? There's not that many for the next 3 games. So I wouldn't be surprised if they could play well enough to win the next 3, which it feels like they desperately need before they get to Nebraska and UCLA.
Can we declare it? Is it gut check Saturday?
Gut check Saturday.
Oh, check Saturday. I mean, you're going
forecast too. Is it going to be a little chilly? That could be in College Park, a little sleepy, cold game.
How cold is it getting in Maryland?
But you're coming from LA, baby. You're coming.
In Raleigh,
it's probably like 60 degrees and cloudy right now.
Nah, in Raleigh, North Carolina, it was 41 this morning. The chill is here.
41 in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
47 here. Maybe you should move to a warmer climate.
I don't know.
It is gut check Saturday.
Gut check Saturday for USC on the road at Maryland. Not one of our big game breakdowns, but definitely one that we have our eye on. Notre Dame loses Benjamin Morrison for the rest of the season. Yikes. So you've lost Traore, you've lost Morrison. I mean,
you lost another DN before that too.
Yeah. I don't know, looking down the rest of Notre Dame's schedule, where we're going to be impacted the most. I guess you could take it all the way down to USC at the end of the season, but this on offense and defense, this is a shell of the team that started fall camp. If Marcus Freeman can guide this roster into the college football playoff, I might have to take a step back and do a little tip of the hat right there, because all of the bad bounces, all of the bad luck that you could be looking for Notre Dame seems to be piling up. If they can continue to stack wins on wins on wins on wins, I think that'll be an impressive job. How much do you think that Morrison injury ends up hurting, and where do you think it'll hurt him the most?
Well, I think it's going to hurt them most when they play USC or when they play a playoff game, right? Like, I don't know who else on this schedule really can threaten them passing the football.
Navy?
Navy, but in a different way. Yeah, for sure.
Georgia Tech this weekend?
Possibly. Who's QBing for Georgia Tech this weekend?
It's going to be Haynes King.
Okay.
Has he not been practicing this week? Since
he definitely got. I don't know. Well, they don't have any practice reports to my knowledge. He got whacked pretty good in that game, so I don't know. I don't think Georgia Tech can throw it on them enough. If they can, that's kind of a concern, I think, because they have not had a good pass game so far this year.
No, they are better running the football for sure.
That line got bet early this week, like King was not going to play. Like, it got bet from 8 to 12. I mean, that's a 4-point move. What did Corso used to say? Somebody knows something.
Yep.
What,
or they think they do.
it's all speculative.
It's also that's right.
Sharps are wrong 40% of the time.
Morrison's a big loss because he's your best corner. He's just a genuinely good player. You lose that, so now guys are stepping into bigger roles that they're not used to. And it's like you look at the schedule, and yeah, there's no really truly great passing attack here that you're terrified of. But to me, Notre Dame is a very talented complementary football team. They play like Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, and those teams. They just have more talent than they do. And now you start taking some of that talent away from defense, which is what that team has mostly leaned on for the most, for this season to kind of help them win games. You start chipping away at that. I still think that if you look at the rest of the schedule, like, listen, I love this Navy story. I love the Army story. I still think Notre Dame's going to win those games. But you just start chipping away at this, and the odds of winning those games become a little worse. And if you've got that loss to Northern Illinois on your resume, you can't really afford a second loss to anybody. So I think as far as that aspect is concerned, if Notre Dame still wants to get to the playoff, this hurts a lot.
You know what helps him, though? Riley Leonard all of a sudden has figured out how to throw the football in the system. He's getting more comfortable. So they're going to need that, I think, coming down the stretch with issues on the defense.
They've been a lot better offensively in recent weeks, for sure. Listen, again, like a smattering of other injury notes. What other updates have stood out from the last couple of days? I'm not overreacting to Smail Munden being out for Georgia. He's missed the last couple games anyway. Yeah. He's a very talented player, but what the information that we've been able to obtain about Georgia's defense in recent weeks, you kind of copy and paste that. So a big headline, no doubt, going into a massive game. You'd rather have them than not, but I don't think that I'm not changing my prediction or my thoughts as we get into big game breakdown a little bit later based on that one alone.
Have we seen if Isaiah Bond's going to play?
He is going to give it a try, okay. I believe.
I mean, that's a big one. I think he's one of the best players in the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
You see his mom said Red River's better than the Iron Bowl. Isaiah Bond's mom had a great time at the Cotton Bowl and said it was a better rivalry than the Iron Bowl. And Isaiah Bond caught the 4th down game winner.
True. Like I don't know how enjoyable it is to play these like road games as a parent, though. As a parent, like going to Auburn, that may not be something she loved. I don't know.
Very fair. 100%.
Jalen Green, that would impact my pick significantly. Left the game. I did have a bye week. They said, I think he's going to play, but if he did not, that would drastically change my opinion of that game with LSU, which is a tricky game for LSU.
I don't know. It's a fun one.
Speaking of LSU, they're supposed to get CJ Daniels back this week.
That's good. More pass catchers, the better, because Garrett's going to throw it whether they're there or not.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up on the other side, the mid-season All-American team was released this week at CBSSports.com. We'll give you the team. Take a look to see if there's any gripes, any complaints, any thoughts, all that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, it was quite a challenge filling out that ballot, but experts from CBS Sports, 24/7 Sports, we did that to put together our mid-season All-America team. There were only 2 unanimous selections on the All-America team. That's seriously that's how difficult this can be when you throw out and cast a wide net. Danny, do you know the answer here?
What's that?
Do you know who the unanimous ones are?
I would figure Ashton Genty's probably the first one.
Yes.
I know.
Is it Cam Ward?
No. Trap Hunter, right?
I know who it is, so I won't answer. Can I answer?
It's because I don't want to leave too much dead time. It's sneaky
Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks.
Okay.
I mean, look, you are a superstar offensive lineman for the number 1 team in the country. You've got I'm not criticizing. I've been filling out these All-American ballots for a long, long time. It can be very, very difficult, especially in the middle of the season. If you are one of these people that when you're looking for talent looks to the NFL side, like the NFL draft, who does the NFL draft people like? Kelvin Banks checks that box. If you're somebody who goes to PFF or other evaluation sites for your answers, Kelvin Banks checks those box. And if you're a tape grinder who just wants to sit down and watch Texas's offense get out there and maul people, well, guess who's out there doing the mauling? Kelvin Banks checks that box. So I'm not surprised here that when we had to fill out our 4 offensive lineman spots for the best in the country, Kelvin Banks was a unanimous selection. Other notable ones.
I was surprised that Travis Hunter wasn't.
Yeah,
very much so. I would
How
like
did the
to
vote go
find
for
out
that?
who left Travis Hunter off their ballot.
What was the vote? How did you put him as a? I see he's on the list
You
as
got-
a corner.
And
like,
as
you pick
all-purpose.
two
It's on there
corner-
twice.
Yeah, you got to pick how many corners were on the ballot that you were allowed to pick, Chip?
2.
Because the way we do it, it's like 2 corners and 5 defensive backs. So like
No,
you can
2
mix up
corners and
safeties and corners.
Yeah, 2 corners and 3 defensive backs.
Yeah. So yeah, I would just like to know who left Travis Hunter off their ballot.
I would also like to know. Yeah.
Or maybe they put him at wide receiver.
I don't know. So the quarterback was Cam Ward out of Miami. The other running back besides Genty was Caleb Johnson. Our wide receivers, Trey Harris from Ole Miss, Teteroa McMillan from Arizona. The stunner of all stunners, as we've got it up here on youtube.com/cover3. I like Gary actually made this comment on the broadcast. He was like, yeah, and I guess there's a big competition for tight end 2 on All-America teams because ain't nobody beating out Tyler Warren. Seth McLaughlin gets the nod at center. Kelvin Banks, Will Campbell, Wyatt Millum at West Virginia, and Tyler Booker at Alabama. Before we head to the defense, let's just hang right here. Danny, Bud, Tom, anything stand out or any names that jumps out that is not there?
I mean, Banks is a great pick. The right tackle for Texas has been playing, in some people's eyes, even better this year, right? Like, which is insane to think about this Texas offensive line, which will probably lead us into that big game breakdown coming up. Hunter not being unanimous is a little surprising. It's been a year where like a lot of the returning vets have just not been quite as good. So you really kind of had to dig for some more young guys, I think. McLaughlin being on there, that's interesting given all the crap Alabama people gave him. He went on the road and did fine. Will be interesting to see how Alabama does on the road this weekend. That's the first road game they have played this year, right? Like the first real road game.
Mm-hmm.
I had his replacement. I had his replacement on my ballot as the center. McLaughlin's great. I think he's done a really good job. But I had Brailsford as my first team All-American center. I
think they're both very happy. I would think.
I think they both have had a
like Bama and Ohio State. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, let's take a look at the defense. Got Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College, Kyle Kennard, Nick Scorton. Then we get to the linebackers, Jay Higgins from Iowa, Sean Dolak from Buffalo, Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma. Then at cornerback, as we mentioned, Travis Hunter from Colorado, Noel Williams from Cal, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, Caleb Downs from Ohio State, and then Jahdae Barron from Texas. Tom, I'll say that this is the place where I felt like I was off from the consensus more than I thought.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
This was, you mentioned how some people go through the process here. You know who leads the nation in tackles?
Is it Sean Dolak?
Yeah. So it came time for some people to fill out their ballots. Clearly, they were just like, well, this guy leads the nation in tackles. So, which I'm not going to argue against because he does lead the nation.
Yeah, the midseason All-American team is about being great in college. And if you lead the nation in tackles, you're doing a great job in college.
That's right. If you play on a bad defense behind a defensive line that can't stop anybody and you're a linebacker, damn it, you're on an All-American team.
I had Abdul Carter on there. I had JJ Pegues on there.
I did not have Pegues on mine.
I had Josiah Stewart, from Michigan at the linebacker position. He didn't end up breaking through. I don't know if Caleb Downs has been awesome. Caleb Downs is a phenomenal player. I don't know if he's jumped off the screen for me. You know, I
did not.
I thought he was pretty good, but I don't know.
I had Jalen Reed from Penn State. I had Avion Terrell from Clemson, who I think's been really, really good. And then I had Jalen Catalon from UNLV.
That's a good one.
Yeah, former Arkansas player. Those are my three in the basically you're looking for your safeties. You got 2 corners, 3 defensive backs, so nickels and safeties take there. So I had Catalon, Terrell, and Reed as my defensive backs right there.
I had Chris Paul at linebacker on mine. I thought he deserved a little more consideration.
Oh, Dan Jackson definitely got a lot of consideration. Filling out the no, wait, hold on. Dan Jackson or Landon Jackson? Does Landon
for Arkansas?
Yeah.
Landon.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a complicated process. Feel free to check
There's a lot of good players, and we only get a few slots.
Yell at us.
Yell at us. Hey, actually, let us know in the tailgate your favorite player that did not make the midseason All-America team. Like, share, subscribe. Go to Spotify. Check it out. All right, let's go ahead and coming up on the other side, we turn the page for big game breakdown week 8, beginning with Georgia's trip to Austin and more next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Every single Wednesday, we take you inside some of the biggest matchups of the week. We call it Big Game Breakdown. That would be Dan Jackson from Georgia was what the tailgate was talking about right there. Okay, so speaking of those Georgia Bulldogs, they head to Texas. It's a game that we've been looking at for a long time. And given everything that we've learned through 6 games for both of these teams, I think it's not exactly where I expected we'd arrive. Danny, how are we feeling about trying to predict the outcome of this matchup? I know what your pick is.
Yeah.
But how'd you get there? Now we get to actually show our work a little bit.
I want to make sure that it's not I want to say that Texas, I feel, is overvalued and Georgia's undervalued. And I want to make sure it's not overrated or underrated, because I just think people have seen what they've seen from Texas. They've been awesome. But how impressive was the win versus Michigan? And it was good and it was awesome. And I was there and it was a beatdown. But now that we know more about Michigan, how impressive was that? Oklahoma, how impressive was it holding them to 3 points when they have a backup quarterback, who's making his second start without 5 wide receivers? It's good. If they've taken care of their business, it's been awesome. But I don't know if they've been challenged the way that Georgia can challenge them specifically through the air. That's been the one area that I don't think Texas has been tested through their secondary, which I think probably is their weakness, which is interesting because I don't think Georgia's been great running the football. So are we looking at a potential game that could feature a lot of offense and a lot of firepower? And my lean would be yes. We've seen Carson Beck twice this season, last week against Mississippi State and earlier against Bama, approach 50 attempts. He had 50 against Bama and he had 48 against Mississippi State. That was a kind of shocking stat when you saw that. But I think they're leaning right into it. And I think they're going to be able to put up some points through the air against Texas. So I would expect maybe a similar game like we saw. And I heard you guys talking about the reaction show. Like you see 2 great offenses and 2 great teams going at it, that they would go toe to toe. And I think it is a close game. And I don't know if I'm going to call for the upset, but I do think Georgia's kind of flying under the radar.
I don't know if you guys heard the news, but Matt Hayes loves the show, longtime listener, Cover 3. He says this is the biggest game of Kirby Smart's career. not the national title games, not those SEC championships, this regular season game against Texas, in which if you lose, you can still win the conference and still make the playoff, is the biggest game of Kirby Smart's career. I echo a lot of what Danny has said, because I was going to play the game we've played with a lot of teams when we do these big game breakdowns, and it's called, what is the best offense Texas has faced? Because you look at their defensive numbers and they are outstanding. They are number one, number two in damn near everything. And then you go up and down the schedule, it's like Michigan with Davis Warren, Oklahoma with Michael Hoggins.
Listen,
UTSA,
our Warhawks, okay?
Colorado
Our
State.
Warhawks.
Yeah, you could argue General Booty is the best QB that the Longhorns have seen all season long. So this is going to be a test for them. And it kind of reminds me of the situation we saw last week with Ohio State, where defensively they were phenomenal, but they hadn't seen an offense with the talent that Oregon had yet. And we saw what happened there. The defense looked mighty regular. Is that same thing going to happen here? But this Georgia offense at times too hasn't exactly been outstanding. And I think, the biggest thing for me in this game, because we could talk about Georgia's defense, and part of this is that they have played Clemson and they have played Alabama. But pass defense-wise, Georgia's defense ranks 96th in the country in EPA per dropback. They're 41st in success rate. They are 71st in explosive pass rate allowed. This is not your typical Georgia defense. They're playing a lot of red zone roulette, and they're not great at that either, because they're only 35th in points per red zone allowed. So some of that is skewed by last week against Mississippi State, but they also gave up 31 points to Mississippi State. But to me, the biggest matchup here will be Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, Jermaine Lowell, those guys that Texas has on the interior of their defensive line, going against a banged-up interior of the Georgia offensive line, which has been the strength of that unit all season long, but it's still without Tate Rutledge and is not as good without Tate Rutledge. So can they blow things up from there? Because if they do, I still think Texas is going to win this game. If they don't, I think Georgia does.
Is Rutledge definitely out? I haven't seen him ruled out. And what has it been 4 weeks from the tightrope?
I would assume he's out.
I think so too.
In fact,
how would we really know? Because there's no way you play him against Mississippi State, right? Unless he's just 100% healthy there. I kind of echo a lot of what Danny and Tom just said with this. Georgia's interior offensive line's been banged up. Wilson hasn't played super well, but ultimately, Georgia's tackles have also had some struggles this year. I really thought those guys, after watching them in the Orange Bowl, would play extremely well, and that Georgia would be in the conversation to win the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best offensive line in college football. And I don't think that those guys have taken the next step for Georgia. Bama was able to get some pressure against them, not so much in the second half. Texas has some really interesting pass rushers, as Tom just pointed out. I think there is some chance they can get home with that. Now, they better, because I think the point about the corners not having been really exposed so far to anything decent, that's a pretty good point. I mean, Oklahoma, no. As you said, Michigan, no. Colorado State, certainly not. So we don't really know how good these guys are. I think there probably is some weakness there. I would love to bet over in this game with one exception. I'll explain why in a second. But I think Carson Beck is playing extremely well right now over the last couple of weeks. I think he's playing good football, delivering the ball where it needs to go. But Robert Thomas, Colby Young, it does kind of strike me like you're kind of losing some of these outside threats that you thought you'd have for the season. You are losing some of these red zone guys, and you still don't have Brock Bowers. I mean, Georgia has guys like Lovett is a good player, right? Bell is a good player. Aaron Smith is a really good gadget player. I'm not saying they can't scheme up stuff and score, but I'd be willing to bet a pretty good bit Texas secondary is better than Alabama secondary, even fully acknowledging they have not played anybody decent so far. Because Bama also didn't play anybody decent so far, and we chronicled on the show how they had guys running wide open through that secondary for quite a few weeks against Wisconsin's backup and against USF and against Western Kentucky, and they weren't always made to pay for it. So the lack of weapons, and then obviously the Bond thing does scare me a little bit for Texas. If this does go under, I think the reason why is because of the lack of the firepower on the outside, and that both teams are able to get away with playing their guys in more one-on-one stuff on the outside, and they're not being made to pay for it because the guys playing outside are just not quite as good as the guys who, in theory, could have been if they weren't hurt or if they didn't have arrest stuff.
I don't know. There's a lot of talent on
But
this.
it does feel like these games, like these big games, fly over nowadays. Whereas I used to, like, think about LSU Bama 10 years ago, or 14 or 12 years ago now. Right? Was it 2012 game, 2011 game?
2011's the 9-6.
2011.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like these games used to go, like national championship games oftentimes used to go under, you know, and just it would play like, oh, the defenses had a lot of time to prepare for what they were doing and all that stuff. Now, like these, they kind of shoot out. Like even Georgia Bama shoot out, like shot it out a lot of times.
Quarterback play and offensive innovation has arrived. It did arrive.
More
around
money to
then
be made as an offensive coordinator.
to the SEC specifically, and those teams oftentimes were playing in the national championship. That 9-6 game drove me nuts because all we were talking about was all the NFL talent. I'm like, they're not really shutting down outstanding offensive philosophies. That was driving me insane.
Well, look, and the other thing about that game was how many field goal attempts were missed in that game. I mean, the ball was being moved. It was just being shut down when it comes time to being in the red zone, being in scoring position, and also you were missing a couple field goals along the way. I mean, didn't Alabama outplay LSU? That was when that was before Alabama decided, Nick Saban decided we are never not having an elite kicker ever again, to the point where they are allegedly tampering with the best kicker in the MAC just to be able to make sure that Alabama doesn't have another situation where they're missing kicks in big games. Who
do you guys think has the coaching edge? We're talking about Kirby Smart, what it means from him. Clearly has the better resume. And I think it includes coordinators.
I think Texas has the coaching edge. 2 reasons. Number one, that halftime or first quarter interview in the middle of the Georgia-Alabama game where Kirby just said he was stunned that Alabama came out and was running empty. Okay. And they put in adjustments. Alabama wasn't having the same success down the way. And then number 2, Mississippi State goes to the backup quarterback and Georgia's like, what? Oh no. Oh God. Yeah. Oh God. What do we do here? And just the depth of fast cars. Sorry, we shouldn't say that with Georgia in the same segment. The depth of elite, like speedy weapons that Sark is just pulling off the bench, you know? Okay, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And, y'all got your cute little Jeremiah Smith. Y'all got your cute little Ryan Williams. Well,
running back.
Can I introduce you to Ryan Wingo on this like end around play where we're getting like a dude with legitimate track speed out in the open field? That's where the other thing about the games flying over, especially with this matchup, is there is just so much speed on the field here that one missed tackle, one missed assignment on a huge stage in a night game in DKR where the place is rocking, like that's a touchdown. Like the one missed tackle, one missed assignment with this kind of speed is a touchdown. I think that there is just, and again, Steve Sarkisian can't coach the defense, and Carson Beck, I agree, but Carson Beck has been delivering some dimes the last couple weeks out. It's getting that like NFL draft evaluators, tape grinders who don't understand scoring situation, but just get to see a billion throws and a cut up. Like they're going to be showing a lot of the like Mississippi State tape, on NFL draft Thursday.
One point of order.
Yeah.
When you're watching the tape, they do show you the score and the situation.
I know. But it's always been a thing about like the vibes. Like you don't know what the possession before. You know, like you don't know in the flow of the game what was like setting up. Like how much urgency was there? Like what kind of game pressure or game leverage was truly on a certain situation? That's all. That's my only beef with cut-ups.
Chip just hates people who grind tape. Chip's like, it's vibes only. What the hell are you watching them actually play football for?
No. It's watch the whole game. Okay.
You can watch the whole game on the film.
I need to hear the crowd grumble. Okay. I need to hear Sanford Stadium pissed off at the fact that Mississippi
you need to hear Tess screaming in your ear.
Yes.
Which by the way, I would like to talk about Miami-Louisville later, but Tess effects for Cam Ward alert on
Uh-oh.
Saturday. All right. Any other we're going to be live after this game is over. It's absolutely massive. It's a heavyweight fight. I'm so fired up for it. Any other matchup thoughts here?
I don't really think there's a quarterback edge or excuse me, a coaching edge in this one.
Okay.
Like I think both these guys are really good coaches.
One obviously offensive, one defensive. If we're talking about head coaches,
yeah. To me, they don't generally make like really, really egregious in-game coaching mistakes. I know it's an awesome question to throw out. I didn't answer because I wasn't really sure, and I don't think I really see like a massive coaching edge. I wouldn't adjust like my power ratings for a coaching edge here. Ultimately, you could tell me that Kirby's been better in big games. I probably agree, but he's also had more of a talent advantage for a while. So
I will argue that Sark is a slightly better coach in this matchup because if he's offense and Kirby's defense, I think his offense is more talented than Kirby's defense this year.
Fair enough.
Also, and that will make him a better coach.
I like Sark's offense better than Bobo's offense, but I don't know if I like Kwiatkowski's defense enough of an edge over Kirby's defensive, mind. So I think they do kind of cancel out. I think it's really tight.
God, it's so good. So much fun. Earlier in the day, the lead into it is the third Saturday in October. It is Alabama and Tennessee. In this game 2 years ago, shout out to producer Jordan, had us firing up Black and Milds on the Instant Reaction show. Because we weren't planning ahead that Tennessee was going to win. So everyone got the best cigar that they could to be able to celebrate the Vols' big victory.
Shout out to gas stations everywhere.
Shout out to gas stations everywhere for providing the high quality cigars to help us deliver the bit on a Saturday night instant reaction show on the Cover 3 podcast. And Danny, how does Alabama? Alabama's got to play an SEC East team for the third game in a row.
Yeah.
God, this is a grind. I mean, they are so lucky that they were in the SEC West for all of those years and that they didn't have to play Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Tennessee back to back to back.
That's right. I mean, the whole dynasty overrated. Would it even have happened if they were in the East? We don't know. This is another awesome matchup. I think with Bama. So both of these teams clearly have some weaknesses, right? That maybe we didn't see coming. And I think what's interesting is that it's opposite of what we've had in the years past. Like Tennessee's offense is struggling. Their defense is awesome. For Bama, their offense is carrying the team while their defense struggles. So like you've got these two opposing forces. Is this just what Tennessee needs offensively for Nico and company to face this defense to get them back on track? Or are they going to continue to struggle and Bama gets it right? And is Jalen Milroe going to play the role of hero yet again against this Tennessee defense, which is pretty filthy? I do think Alabama's offense has been a little bit too reliant upon Milroe and his legs and Ryan Williams to make a superstar catch. And so I do think Tennessee will probably have a pretty good game plan to try to slow Alabama down. So kind of the opposite of the other game. I think this one might be lower scoring. Because I don't know, even if Tennessee, as porous and as many big plays as Alabama's given up, I don't know. I'm worried about Tennessee's offense. They just have not been able to execute anything.
I mean, definitely echo all those concerns. With Milroe, if you had kind of highlighted this schedule to start the year, the games in which you were like, okay, probably need to run him a lot because that's the most dangerous thing they have. At Wisconsin, before you knew Van Dyke was hurt and before you knew Wisconsin was just that bad. Okay. Georgia, Tennessee, at LSU, and maybe one of like Auburn or Oklahoma. You would not have said Vanderbilt. You would not have said South Carolina. But yet they did have to run him quite a bit in those games. Like he has really not had a break. This guy is so freaky. Maybe he just doesn't have any kind of slowdown in his game. But I do wonder also as a quarterback, like, do you think all the hits start to add up in terms of your throwing?
He got the crap kicked out of him against South Carolina.
Yes.
There were a couple times he got up and he just did not look quite the same. And it absolutely takes its toll.
I mean, I think Tennessee defensive line can cause some problems for Alabama. I'm not joking about this Bama on the road thing. Like that has been an issue. It has been a specific issue under Milroe. If you look at it, did McLaughlin have any bad snaps on the road at Oregon?
Not that I remember. I mean,
okay. Well, you know what? He had a
Will
lot
Howard
of bad
did drop one.
Will Howard dropped one, but I don't think it was.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The
if
snap
it
was
hit him in
fine.
the
Will
hands,
Howard
right?
was, yeah.
Yeah. Now I think this is something that DeBoer and Milroe will get cleaned up, and it probably won't be an issue. But I don't know that. I just think that was a problem for them last year on the road. Operationally, they were bad in terms of like when you give the ready call, remembering to give the ready call, clapping on time, like all that kind of stuff. You would see like an inordinate number of false starts and bad snaps from Alabama. That's not all on Milroe. Okay, there's other like communication that has to go on up front, but I am really curious how they handle a real road game. And with all due respect, like Vandy won on the field and deserved to win, but that was still like more of a Bama home crowd, right? Like, how do you handle it when it's loud out there? And I know these are kind of soft factors, but it's a real factor if you've played. Like, if you can't hear the snap count, you're a count late. Maybe James Pierce eats you up. I don't know. Although Florida handled it pretty okay. I imagine this crowd will be a little more jacked than that one was. I think the Peely injury matters a whole lot for Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Tackle
one of the guys
out for the year.
That's one of the guys I had marked on my sheet preseason. Like with every team, I kind of go through. I'm like, all right, if they like, who can they really not afford to lose other than QBs typically? And Peely was one of the names I had for Tennessee. So does that impact their ability to run and pass game defensively? I think that's a possibility. On the other side, I know Tom's going to talk about Nico. I'm just cede the floor.
I mean, I was just wondering if this is the game where Tennessee's offense can finally get right going against an Alabama defense that's been a little soft at times, even if the numbers aren't terrible. I don't know. Like Tennessee does need to perform better offensively, particularly in the pass game. Nico does need to play better. Tennessee ranks 90th in EPA per dropback, but it is 26th in explosiveness, which kind of reminds you of what you're dealing with when you have a very talented young quarterback. The down-to-down efficiency, hit or miss. But the big plays, they're still there, and it also kind of just goes to play with Heupel's offense. But there were also times last week where the big plays were there. Nico just missed the throws. And like there was one, he underthrew a really bad interception. There was one, the guy was, I can't remember who it was, but he was deep over the middle by 5 yards. He'd beaten his guy, and Nico overthrew him by another 5 yards. It's like if you just put that throw in the area, that's a touchdown. The other problem I think for Tennessee here is the offensive line stinks. Like the tackles that they're throwing out there are not playing SEC football. I'll just phrase it that way. I think that's the nicest way I could play it. I could also say they're not playing AAC football, but I'll just stick to SEC. The interior of the line is okay. Cooper Mays is the center, he's the best guy that they've got from what I have seen. It's not a coincidence that every single run play is in the A gap because the center is the only guy they trust to actually create a hole for him. But offensively, they've just been so disappointing. And Nico has been a big part of it. And I think that the receivers are not doing, I mean, the receivers aren't playing terribly. They are getting open. They are being missed, but I still think that they are not helping the cause as much as they could be. I think the offensive line is a huge, huge issue that I don't know if they can overcome it this year, not against really good teams. And I think Alabama, for all its warts, is still a very good team. But as Danny and Bud touched on, like, you can't just have Jalen be the entire team. And if you look at their run game, overall, they rank 16th in EPA per rush and 32nd in success rate. When it's just their running backs in the run game and Jalen, you take Jalen out of the equation, they're 55th and 88th. Like, you need to find a way to move the ball on the ground effectively without having to have Jalen taking hits repeatedly. Because if Jalen goes down, this team could be in some big trouble. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of questions about both of these teams that I don't think we have answers to. Maybe we'll get some of them in this game. Maybe we won't. Maybe these are just two talented but overly flawed teams that are just going to have to try to survive week to week to see how far they can get. But it is a very interesting game. And also, I think the one thing that is Bud hit on that I think is huge is Jalen Milroe in a stadium of 100,000 people, very, very loud, because they did have that game at Wisconsin this year, but that Tyler Van Dyke injury happened in like the first quarter and sucked all the air out of that stadium because they knew they had no shot once that happened. So how he handles that environment, how Josh Heupel tries to scheme some easy stuff for Nico early just to build up the confidence, because he's played like crap the last couple weeks. You kind of need to get him feeling good about himself early. I think that's going to be key. I think the first quarter of this game could decide the game.
So Bama's DC has only faced this, I think, one time when he was the DC at South Al, and they hosted Old Dom in 2022, which was that the first year Ricky Ronnie there?
22.
Yeah,
Ricky Ronnie might have been there earlier, because I think Ricky Ronnie's
he was
first
an OD
year
by then.
Ricky Ronnie's first year was when they decided not to play, and they tried to make a run at the UConn National Championship.
Okay, so he's been there for longer. So they won 27-20, which is not bad. It looks like the numbers from Old Dom were mostly okay. I'm not really sure how they didn't score. I'm always kind of interested. Like, does this certain coordinator have a history of playing a certain scheme well or not well? But in this case, I don't really think so. But clearly, like, people are going to watch what Arkansas did and what Florida did. And they're different plans. Like, there are similar elements, but they are different plans, and they'll see how much they can adapt it.
Also, I'm going to go back to my lazy narrative, but that defensive coaching staff as a whole, I mean, we can talk about, like, Kane Womack and sort of like his own experience with that. But let's see, what was your boy's name, bud? Joe Bowen. Okay. So Buffalo's defense in 2023 with Mo Linguist as head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo's defense in 2024 with Joe Bowen and his defensive coordinator. Alabama's pass defense in 2024. I mean, there's some connecting of those dots right there with that superstar defensive staff that they've got lined up.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Linguist would have faced this when Sean Lewis was there, right? How long was Linguist at Buffalo?
Since Leipold, he came out. He was promoted from the staff when Lance left.
I really hadn't thought about that, but since we have so many guys who have been like coordinator, so he was 2021 to 2023, and Sean was there in 21 and 22, right?
Yes,
because he was 1 year Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So the 21 and 22 years, Kent State won 48-38 and 30-27. Now, granted, there's probably some ways you can't really play this in the MAC, and thus, like, I think why it worked.
Well, the level of athlete in the MAC is just superior to everywhere else.
Yeah. But, like, how much disguise and stuff can you – this is a hard thing to disguise. And Bama's secondary has been sort of the weakness. So I don't know, like, how much they can get in for this. Maybe they can. But I have a hard time thinking that Nico and Bama and Tennessee can play, like, materially worse than they've already played. So I kind of think they're due for a bounce back.
Two things.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Two things I took away from Josh Heupel's press conference. He mentioned it. Peely makes the calls, headset, in-helmet communications. So now we're going to have to be handing that off. Not only is your tackle leader, he is also legitimately we always talk about, he's the quarterback on the defense, coach on the field. Like, no, we actually have one. Peely was that. Number two, Tennessee fans have been playing the game. Who do you think he's talking about? Here's the quote. The question was if he thought the offensive line play improved from Arkansas to Florida. He says, at times, but still just not consistent enough. We need 5 guys operating as one. And a lot of times we had 4 guys operating as one. That's how we clean it up and be more efficient in what we're doing up front. So he's got his eyes on somebody that's effing up.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played that game to try to, like, figure out who it is, but
it was Lance Hurd.
It is very clear that Josh Heupel.
It was number 53, Chip. Lance Hurd.
Yeah,
it is. So, Josh, you didn't want to put him on blast. We'll do that job for you here on the Cover 3 podcast. It's very clear that he has identified one of the places where Tennessee's offense is struggling.
I think Tennessee is bottomed.
I hope so. I want to wear my Nico shirt so bad.
Look, we'll see. I mean, this, like, Georgia, Texas heavyweight battle, 2 teams that we feel like are, like, really, like, good, and Alabama and Tennessee. It's like, all right, one's gonna, like, Alabama Tennessee is a bar fight.
Yes.
Like two very imperfect fighters. And this is then the primetime game in the SEC is more of like a heavyweight boxing match. All right, let's hit a couple other ones. Miami at Louisville. Danny,
Can I ask about this game? This kind of bothered me. What window would you guys rather have if you were the ACC commissioner, Jim Phillips, for this game, which features a top 10 team with a Heisman Trophy contending quarterback against a team that is 4-2? Would you rather have the noon window on ABC or the 7 p.m. primetime window, but you're up against the Georgia-Texas juggernaut?
I would rather have the noon ABC.
I'd rather have the noon window.
Yes.
You all would?
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Genius move then.
Okay, good job, Jim.
I know he doesn't have any say in it. It just bothered me.
Hey, listen, he doesn't have that PhD for nothing. All right, his name is Dr. Jim Phillips, PhD,
right.
MD. So he's got it locked in.
I don't want to play TV executive, but in that noon window, you're up against Clemson, Virginia, Indiana, Nebraska, and Mizzou, Auburn as the primary games on the primary networks you're facing. So I would much rather have the noon window this week.
And if you're trying to orchestrate Miami getting through this unscathed, you would play the game at noon. So not saying they're trying to do that. I just thought it was interesting. I probably would have rather had prime time, but man, you're going to lose some eyeballs.
Yeah, I would. I would definitely rather have, because you just the noon slate can be a little bit slow. When you are the game in the noon slate, then you have you've got a huge spotlight here. So what's been up with Miami? Okay, like what's been going wrong? Anybody got a good speaking of Jim Phillips, PhD, MD? Anybody got a good diagnosis of why the Hurricanes have found themselves needing the narrowest of margins to be able to get past Virginia Tech and Cal heading into their off week?
Too many big plays allowed on defense.
Yep.
Explosives allowed on defense. Completely agree. That's been huge. Tom, you have numbers on this?
No, nothing off the top of my head. Just watching, they're allowing a lot of big plays.
If they fix this, they're just fine.
Oh, because they're still like tackles for loss. They're great. Sacks. They're great. Like interceptions. They're great. Right. I mean, your classic havoc stats, they're still fantastic. The season profile as a whole is still like a top 15, top 20 style defense. And when your offense is lighting the world on fire with Cam Ward, then that's typically all we really ask for the complimentary football side of this. It has just been only recently, only in these last 2 games, the explosives are getting a little bit concerning. And I would say that this is not the coach that you want to be going up against when it comes to trying to scheme up those explosive plays.
I think it's an easy over, but for the Louisville offensive line injuries and concerns. I mean, SMU got home with a lot of pressure. SMU is a heavy blitz team. Miami wants to be a heavy blitz team, I think, under this coordinator. Like, how well does Louisville handle that? Shuck is by far the best quarterback and best receivers they've seen, right? Way better than Cal.
I was digging into this game, and I think this is where the emergence of Isaac Brown, the freshman running back for Louisville, is huge. He's become a real game breaker, and we remember, last year Louisville had 2 of them. Like, the real key to Louisville's offense was being able to create those explosive plays on the ground through the run. And Isaac Brown, wouldn't you know it, from Homestead, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you think he's excited to play against the U as he's suiting up? I mean, look, the Louisville roster does and has for a long time tapped Florida, the state of Florida and South Florida. But that was just one thing I set out. I was writing about Isaac Brown this morning, and I, pulling up everything. I was like, oh, that's right. He's a player from down there.
If Miami wins this, it's probably because their defensive line just eats Louisville up, and they don't have to blitz as much. And Cam Ward just doesn't do the crazy interception thing. I mean, I wonder sometimes, like, they were so damn good early in the season, like for the first month, and everything they tried worked. I mean, Cam is like kind of jogging against UF in the swamp.
He did have that pick early in that game. I think it's just in him. You know,
Yeah.
like
maybe they
for
just got to
sure.
live with it. You know,
Yeah.
But
the run game for Miami has not been quite as good as I thought it would have been. Now, part of this I wonder is like they were kind of game scripted out of it against Cal. Like I thought they would go out and probably pound the ball against Cal some and not ask Cam to throw it 50 times. But because they got down so early, they were sort of game scripted out. They had to play in that way. I wonder if they try to reestablish the run here. Are they getting the left tackle back, Rivers?
Don't have
he's missed like 4 or 5 weeks,
like 4 games. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, we talked about the explosives. I think a lot of times in college, it's part and parcel because these are college players still. Like if you look at Miami stats, they're number 1 in pressure rate and they're number 1 in negative play rate. A lot of times defenses that are very good at that are somewhat prone to giving up big plays because they don't have as many guys back after they get the pressure and they force, they're kind of selling out up front a little bit. Although Miami doesn't blitz overly often, but I think some of that has to do with it. But to me, on the flip side, Louisville is also very good at getting pressure on the quarterback. And just what you mentioned a minute ago, Danny, like there are 2 Cam Wards to me. There's the one, like the interception he threw at Florida. To me, that was Cam feeling himself and feeling really good and sitting there thinking, I can do anything in the world right now, and I'm going to try this. And it's like, oops, didn't work. The last few weeks, the mistakes he's been making are, oh, crap, oh, crap, oh, crap, oh, crap. Like, I'm panicking mistakes. So if Louisville is able to get that kind of pressure on him, which they rank 12th nationally in pressure rate, then you can get him to make mistakes. And if he does that, that keeps the opponent in the game because without those, Miami's games the last few weeks aren't close. They're probably winning by 2 to 3 scores. That's what's keeping opponents in. The big plays are a problem defensively that they want to iron out, but the bigger problem is the turnovers. So that's what you have to do if you're Louisville in this spot. You have to make Cam Ward uncomfortable. You have to get him to make the panic throws that he's been making the last few weeks, and you have to get the turnovers. If you're Miami, Tyler Shuck is a good quarterback, talented, especially when he's healthy. I remain somewhat nonplussed by the Louisville offense overall. I don't particularly think it's anything outstanding. I know the numbers have been pretty good, but I feel like a lot of that has to do with the guy calling the plays and designing the offense. So it's always dangerous. As far as guys, I think Miami's defense can overwhelm this Louisville team. So I don't have too much faith in Louisville here. Of course, I said all of these same things about Louisville last year when they were playing at home against Notre Dame, and we know how that went. Of course, that game was at night, and as Danny's trying to mention, this early sleepy start time on Saturday, maybe they won't have the same kind of juice at the Papa John's. What are they calling it now? Is it still Papa John's Stadium?
L&N Stadium officially, but to me, it's always the house.
It's always Papa John's. Yeah, it's the pizza box.
Yeah, it's the house that Papa built.
Yeah, but I think Miami is the much better football team. I really do. And I think that unless they screw up, they're going to win this game.
Tailgate says
held up pretty good against Notre Dame's front this year.
It's true. And that was on the road.
Yeah.
But with Monroe Mills being hurt, I think it's a difference there for me. The left tackle for Louisville.
Yeah.
Any other what? All right, let's
Miami off a bye is huge. Being able to prep for Brahms, plays, they can, they're healthy. That's a huge advantage for them going on the road in this spot after that, brutal West Coast trip. Louisville's secondary, they're giving up 66% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. So I would expect this could be a big game for Cam Ward. But as Tom mentioned, Tramel Logan, Ashton Delani, they can put some pressure on him, but he's not the type of quarterback because he can escape. Like they've got to figure out a way to get him down and get maybe a strip sack, something where they can impact him and throw us off his game because he's so good. When he misses that first guy that maybe gets free, that's when he burns you.
If Louisville's front doesn't have a spectacular game, they are giving up at least 40 points.
Yeah.
At least.
Sacks and interceptions need to be there for Louisville's defense. Probably the buzz things here. All right. Any other lingering thoughts on Illinois, Michigan, or on Indiana, Nebraska? Other games of note from across the country?
I said on the show yesterday, Illinois by 1 billion. Okay, I got a little caught up in the moment. Illinois by 1 million. All right. I'm not
All
going to
right,
go with the B
okay.
word.
Thank you for being so much more measured with your analysis right
You know,
there.
you turn those TV lights on, Chip, and I just get excited.
Arkansas, LSU. I mean, another
2-point spread.
Another bar fight, another like two untrustworthy fighters. Like kneecaps might be bit, bottles will be broken. Like there's going to be something against the rules that makes
ears will be cut off. Somehow.
Yeah. I don't know what somebody's got a knife. That's it. LSU Arkansas. Somebody's got a knife. We'll find out.
There's a team that I think is fraudulent, and I think we'll find out a little bit more about them this weekend. Mizzou playing Auburn. That's an interesting line that comes out. I think they should be able to win that game, but Auburn's defense could provide some problems. I think that's a really good game.
It's a good call. Sleepy early start.
Florida State is an underdog at the Duke Blue Devils on a Friday night
during Brocktober.
I mean, is Coach Ham going to coach him up? I mean, are we going to be able to like keep this thing close in Cameron? Let's I
kind of like Florida State's chances in this one.
I do too.
Brock Glenn, another week to prep, you get some rest, get guys healthy. The defense I thought's been playing really well. I don't hate them in this spot.
So I was thinking about it because they've got North Carolina coming up too. And it was a come the F on principle. Like Florida State, come on. All right. No way are we going to do this. And we were debating before the show started that Florida State has the sod cemetery. If you go and you beat a team on the road as an underdog, you take a little bit of the sod. If you beat Duke, you cut the nets down.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's even better.
The stadium is
it's right there. You can walk right up.
Right there. You can walk right up the stairs of Wallace Wade Stadium, literally walk across the sidewalk and you're at Cameron. Walk in there, cut down the nets, and bring it back to the sod cemetery. That would be fitting.
I mean, do you want to talk about calling a team fraudulent? I know this. Can we call Duke fraudulent? Like, it's Duke, so it's like that's the only thing that's keeping me from doing. But like 5-1, that is a misleading 5-1.
Well, it's not.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Good note from the chat too. Who was it in there? Said this is going to be the most unbelievable bad beat when they go under the 5.5 win total.
Brock. Oh my God. Yeah. Well,
it might happen.
So based on how they've played, 6.5 looks under 6.5 looks like a great bet, and that's probably not going to get home either. So, somebody said that Brock, and I watched that tape, and Brock looked pretty good, and I know some other schools are already sniffing around, like trying to, like if he jumps in the portal, they're like, well, based on that Clemson tape, I thought the Norvell press conference was really interesting, and I don't know if this is just, well, I do know Brock showed some stuff in the game that he had not been shown in practice in terms of managing the offense, accuracy, decisiveness. We talk about this sometimes, and it sucks because you practice every day, man. I mean, like, you know, whether it's like organized practice or just off season with your teammates or something, like a lot of these guys are working football nowadays quite a bit. Some guys just, I guess, can still be gamers. Now it's one game. It doesn't mean Brock Glenn's going to play like that all the time, but they said it was the second highest graded PFF game for an FSU quarterback since 2022, which would mean like only one Jordan Travis game. Like, I don't think that's accurate. But I do think it's like if you looked at how he played, I thought he played really well against Clemson.
I did too.
Really well.
I thought he provided the spark that you've been looking for. And I know the results didn't go in the end, but I thought he played pretty clean. As much heat as DJ has taken, there have been so many drops for Florida State. That's the first thing. You got to start making some plays for these quarterbacks. But I definitely thought Brock was very decisive. He wasn't afraid to take shots down the field when they were there. I just thought the offense looked a little more lively.
My buddy, he coaches somewhere else. I'm not going to dime him out for this, but he is an LSU fan, and he had heard the show and was like, and they don't play in the SEC, obviously. Like, they don't have an SEC coach rooting for LSU. But he's like, hey, I heard what you guys said about him on the show, and I went and watched. Any chance y'all screw this up and he'd be LSU starter next year if Nuss goes early? And I was like, dude, I'm telling you, like, okay, so it made me feel a little better. Like other college coaches were like, yeah, okay, no, it's one game, but like that was impressive. But Norvell in the press conference was like, well, he really showed us a lot of things that we had not really seen from him in practice. So we hope those continue.
4 games, to be fair, because he was awful against But that was his first start, and then the
And he
Orange
got
Boys
hurt
playing
in the
against
first
Georgia.
quarter against Louisville.
Yeah,
Remember?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Look, he could go out and totally lay an egg. I was pretty impressed with that specific game.
Travis Hunter expected to play, according to Deion Sanders, as
Expected to
Colorado
play definitely, I thought was the word he used. Like what you
expected
said,
to play
certainly. He's
definitely.
expected to play certainly.
Colorado.
you think they limit his snaps or just still roll him
Hell
out there?
no.
I think you got to have him on defense.
I think so too, and that's where I think you try to
McMillan.
manage it a little bit on offense. Like if you've got a lead, if you go out early, like you try to pick your spots to get him out when you can. But I don't know if he's going to, because I guarantee he's begging Deion to play.
It's
Yeah,
Teteroa
Travis
McMillan.
won't let him limit his snaps.
Yeah.
That's
But you need him on offense now a little more because of the fact that Amarion Miller is out for the season. And when Hunter and Horn went down, like he stepped up and he had like 8 for 150 or something crazy. And it wasn't flukish. Like against Baylor was kind of fluky, but like this was real.
Has Shepard been super disappointing to anybody else?
I thought he stepped up and played okay in this one a little
Played
bit,
good,
but like
yeah.
one drop. But I thought he'd be better there than he has been. But it's a hard rotation to crack. They're good at receiver, legitimately, and Shador's playing well.
Yeah.
Can they avoid taking the 13-yard sack? That's the one thing, because if that continues, I
Shador's
do not
NFL
think their
draft
ability.
profile right there. Can he avoid taking the 13-yard sack?
Maybe they have an innate ability to convert like 2nd and 23, but like the rate at which they're converting some of these super long down and distances, I don't really think it's sustainable. Now, it's a little more sustainable than it would be if you didn't have a guy who's going to be like a first-round quarterback, but it's a little high for me.
Ball State at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's gonna blast them.
Don't get caught looking ahead.
Do they have motivation to blast him? Like, granted, it's an SEC team, Ball State, like you need it, but
Like you
how much
thinking
do you
like
run
another
Pavia
Georgia
against?
State situation here?
Well, that's a problem. Like, how much do you really run Pavia? I don't know.
Eyes on the prize. They're going for the SEC. They don't need to beat Ball State. To do that.
They get it done.
Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Come and hang out for our best bets for week 8. We'll be rolling through our locks, and you want to make sure you watch live at youtube.com/cover3, because sometimes the line at 11:15 ain't the line by 1:15. So make sure you come and watch live. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
See ya.